YouTube, what's good with you guys? Gniady back here in the video, and today we're going to be starting a first of 8 series where I break down all 8 divisions in the NFL. I'm doing this one by one on my TikTok right now, doing a 1 of 32 series where I break down each team individually, go over their entire record, and give you guys my opinion on their team and how they're going to finish the season in the upcoming year. So now on my YouTube channel, I'm going to do a little bit more long form where I go over each division, all 4 teams in the division, and my records for each one once I finish a division on my TikTok series. So head over there, I'll have it linked in the description, but let's hop right into this. Now, taking a look at this spreadsheet right here, we have the records I've predicted for each team and then how they finish in the division. So obviously the first thing that probably jumps out to most people is that the Steelers will finish 8-9 is what I predicted. Looking at their record based off of Rodgers and other things like that have come in this offseason with DK being there, I just can see a world where they end up being 8-9. Obviously, Tomlin's never had a season under 500. So that's where obviously it comes in. And I knew making that video I'd have comments of people going, oh, well, how the Steelers are going to at least go 9-8, which, like, obviously the argument is there. The logic is there for sure. I understand that. But based off their record and Rodgers depleting and possibly causing drama within the Steelers, I could see them not finishing above that mark, especially looking through their schedule going game by game. I also had them starting 3-0, so it's not like they're going to be... It's not like they can't win a bunch of games for sure, right? I just think it comes down to the overall consistency, how Rodgers plays, how he deals with Mike Tomlin, how their chemistry is with DK Metcalf there. Because both of those guys can become divas at any point in this season and cause a real catastrophe for that team. Obviously, the defense is good. They got rid of Minka. They put it in Jalen Ramsey, which is something that I don't really fully understand. Of course, I love Jalen Ramsey, but he's getting older. He's not the same Jalen Ramsey he used to be. Minka was a good piece, obviously, but they just felt like he didn't make enough big plays, and that's kind of why they wanted Jalen Ramsey. I think Jonnu Smith is a really good and underrated pickup for them. I think he's a good tight end. They already have Freiermuth and Darnell Washington there as well. So how that tight end room will look, Arthur Smith in the building, that makes a little bit more sense. We don't really know exactly what the running back situation is going to be. Obviously, they got Tyler Warren, but they got rid of Najee. Didn't really address the running back situation too much. So that could be interesting, especially with a guy like Arthur Smith, who tends to be pretty run heavy. So those are all the most outstanding factors to me with those Steelers. But we're going to go team by team and go over the moves they made this offseason and kind of how much that really impacts their record and how much of a difference that really makes from the team they were last year. So starting with the Ravens, they picked up Chidobe Awuzie, former Bengal, who was pretty good. I mean, he's nothing special. I think that really doesn't move the needle that much for the Ravens at all, but it doesn't really hurt at the same time. They went and got Tylan Wallace as well. So he's a decent receiver, nothing insane there. They got D-Hop, someone who was a contributor for the Chiefs, right, but just still not the player he used to be. Again, doesn't really move anything for me. I think they needed to address the offensive weapons a little bit more. So they didn't fully do that this offseason. Jake Hummel, whatever. Patrick Card, they re-signed him. Ronnie Stanley, re-signed him, is really good. He's a really good offensive lineman. That helps a lot. Ben Cleveland, doesn't move me. Cooper Rush doesn't move me. But these are all the things that they did this offseason, of course. And then taking a look at their draft, which is the most important thing, obviously, I think, for each team this year. Malachi Starks, really good prospect. He kind of slipped down the draft a little bit farther than people thought. I think they had some concerns for him, but he played at Georgia. Georgia defenders is usually a good idea to take in these drafts. They usually end up being pretty well. That's a pretty NFL-ready defense year in and year out. So I think him alongside Kyle Hamilton will be really good. And even if he starts slow, having Kyle Hamilton to help you up at the top there, to help you kind of get used to being in the league and, make your way there, it is about the best you could possibly have as a counterpart for you at safety. So Malachi Starks, I think, is a good pick. Mike Green slipped a lot more than I think people thought. He was the 27th pick of the second round. So someone who absolutely, tested really well, had a great Senior Bowl, produced extremely well, of course, at a smaller school. So that kind of hurt him a little bit, right? But we saw him at the Senior Bowl look really, really good. I think he has a chance to be well. He's a good speed to power guy, someone who might not be super effective in the run defense aspect of, the game. But I think overall, if there's anyone who can scheme and get these guys to do well, it's the Ravens, right? I think that both of these guys will find their way really well in the league with the Ravens, probably a lot more than they would with any other team. Emory Jones Jr., they picked up, right, an offensive tackle here, 3rd round tackle, nothing special, a 5th round tackle, a 4th round linebacker. And that's really the only thing. So their top 2 picks are the most notable, but I think they can be really, really effective in this defense for sure. And I think overall the Ravens defense should see a big improvement from last year, and that's usually what holds them back from getting to that Super Bowl every year. Of course, there's the Lamar narratives, but overall, I think Lamar actually plays really, really well in the playoffs, higher than the public perception, at least for sure. So the Ravens, I think, will still finish 14-3. That was my final record prediction. So let's hop into the Bengals offseason moves. So obviously, I'm in my TikTok video about the Bengals. I talked about the defense being their biggest problem. They allowed over 30 points 7 times, and they allowed 40 points twice. 44 against the Steelers. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, there's no reason. Like, Joe Burrow had the most passing yards and touchdowns of any quarterback last year. Should have won MVP if his team was any better than they were. And then somehow I have Bengals fans still arguing that their defense is not the problem. Genuinely, going into that video, I go, there's no way that that's going to be the biggest gripe with the Bengals. Like, what team are you watching that you're not like, okay, the defense is the problem, we need to address the defense? Allowing 30 plus points 7 times, that's really bad. They were like in the mid 20s for total points allowed and then total yards allowed last year, and I got people talking about their defense. Like, I just couldn't believe that. But here's some of the moves they made. Cam Sample, D tackle, doesn't move me. Marco Wilson doesn't move me. BJ Hill, re-signing him I think is a good move. TJ Slayton, okay, whatever. Samaje Perine is coming back to Cincinnati. I think, again, doesn't really move me. But when you have running back question marks and you get rid of Khalil Herbert, Bears fan here, who they really didn't even let show off his true potential there. They just kind of put him in when Chase Brown went down, and then they didn't really give him the ball from there. But these offseason moves don't move me at all. Let's take a look at their draft. So taking a look at the Bengals draft picks, obviously they took Shamar Stewart with their first pick. Good address defense, right? Someone who had an insane RAS score at the draft. I think top 2, like, of all time at his position. Something insane, but someone who really didn't produce at the college level. I think he had 2 sacks this year in college. He had 4.5 sacks in 3 seasons at Texas A&M. That's just not good production, right? I think every year you kind of realize that some guys might not have the skills or tools you're looking for, but production at the college level really does matter, and something that you should probably take into consideration more. Now we saw that kind of not be the case here, because we saw Mike Green lead all of college football in sacks and go a lot farther down the draft, and then someone who really didn't do well at all with getting sacks and production in the college level, but tested extremely well, right? So the draft really is a potential related thing in every single sport. Potential is really what matters, of course. But looking here, his pro comp is Danielle Hunter. I think he is far off from Danielle Hunter, but he has the athletic tools to be that. But as far as actually getting that production, as far as actually doing all the small things well, I think he's a little bit far off there. And I'm not sure if the Bengals are really going to be the team to help him out there. He's got contract disputes right now. He doesn't like the incentives and other things that they have there. Not all of his money is guaranteed. So these are all things that we're dealing with there. What that really means, I'm not sure how much that will actually affect the Bengals. I'm sure he's still going to play anyways, but this is something to keep note. They still haven't re-signed Trey Hendrickson or given an extension. I'm not sure exactly what the deal is with his contract, but these are all things that I've noticed about the Bengals, right? Trey Hendrickson, he just led the NFL in sacks. And if I'm him, I'm only getting older. Realistically, my seasons aren't going to get better. I want to take this season and use it to get as much money as I can going forward. And the Bengals using most of their cap on T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow, realistically aren't gonna have the money to sign Trey Hendrickson. And if I'm him, I'm looking for the most money possible. I'm coming off a season where I did really well with a really bad defense. And I mean, you might love Cincinnati, you might love what you have there with Joe Burrow and that offense, and want to lead that defense, of course. But I think overall, it's a money-based league, right? You want to go and get the most money possible. I think that's really how current NFL day is. It's not like, oh, I want to stay with the same team, I'm loyal to my team. You know, that's not really how it is nowadays. People are really looking to get that most amount of money because you're only in the league so long. You really never know how much longer you have left in this league. It's a pretty cutthroat league, and you can get hurt, have a really bad injury at any time. But let's look at some other stuff. Demarius Knight Jr., they took a linebacker. Dylan Fairchild, I think, is actually a pretty good pickup for them. Barrett Carter, a Clemson linebacker. Jalen Rivers, a guard. So they took two guys who could have really an impact right away, potentially on defense, a linebacker and an edge rusher as well. But I think really corner and safety are things that they really still need to figure out. Those are guys that they've lost since that Super Bowl team because they didn't want to re-sign. So those are positions that are still of needs that we really haven't seen addressed. So the Bengals defense still really worries me. I think I've touched on it as much as I possibly can. So I'd love another Bengals fan to still defend their defense. Please do. So moving on to the Steelers, some offseason moves they made. Ben Skwarknik, okay. Nothing moves me there. Scotty Miller, maybe like 3 years ago, would have been a good pickup. Not sure. Isaiah Lodermilk, D tackle, never even heard of him. Juan Thornhill, okay. A 6-year NFL veteran from the Browns. He could potentially be something there. Brandon Eccles. Throne watchers know about Brandon Eccles. Mason Rudolph re-signed him. Darius Slay Jr. See, that's a good pickup. Someone who just played on the top defense in the NFL. Obviously, the age is a concern. But he just came off a Super Bowl team. I think he still played pretty well. Obviously, I think the age was showing up a little bit, but I think he's got one more good year in him at least. So, and that's what they signed him to, a 1-year contract extension or a 1-year contract. Kenneth Gainwell, again, going for Eagles players usually isn't a bad idea. Malik Harrison, I think, is an interesting one. Overall, I think they have one of the better offseason moves I've seen. DK's not listed here. Aaron Rodgers not listed here, but those are two more guys that they did. They dished away George Pickens. I touched on this. I think those are really the Rodgers move. I think is good. You don't have a quarterback, you need a quarterback. Rodgers can give you at least league average play, most likely. So that's good. They obviously drafted Will Howard, who we'll get into, who I think could be something interesting in the NFL. John Gruden banged the table for this guy, someone who just won a national championship. Again, that's something that maybe we should pay attention to. I think it was mostly his roster. That was a big reason for his success, of course. But still, something notable to keep. He's got the size. He's got the arm strength. Seems like he has the intelligence there. So that'll be interesting after this season. But we're just focusing on this current season. So those are some good moves. So the Steelers took Derek Harmon from Oregon, who I think is actually a really good pick. Underrated pick. Someone that I think could immediately make an impact on that defense because Cameron Hayward, as it talks about here, is 36 years old, but he still had arguably the most productive season from a D tackle last year. 10 sacks, 10 deflections, top 10 in sacks, led the league in deflections. So someone who still wreaks havoc at the NFL level, of course, even at his older age. Caleb Johnson, who I think slipped down people's boards a lot, but is still a high ceiling guy. Maybe a lower floor, but a high ceiling for sure. Caleb Johnson has that speed, someone who I think will make an immediate impact. So when I was talking about their running back room, I forget about Caleb Johnson being there. So I think that'll be really interesting. I think that could be a really good pickup there. Someone who can split time with Tyler Warren and see the field a decent amount. Or Jalen Warren. I'm thinking of the tight end from Penn State. And then Jack Sawyer, someone who didn't have the greatest numbers in the combine, so that is definitely a big reason they dropped down the board. But I think pairing him with DJ Watt, someone who has a similar build, maybe a similar play style, you could see TJ Watt being a good mentor to him. And I'm sure he has a lot to learn from TJ Watt, and TJ Watt can be giving him a lot to learn as well. Someone who can help him make his way through the league and potentially do good. Another guy who produced at the college level, maybe not at a high level, but made some big plays. So I like that a lot. And the rest of their draft, nothing really notable. I already talked about Will Howard, but that's really all I have to say about the Steelers this year. And I still think 8-9. Argue with me on that all you want, but I still think 8-9 is where they're going to finish. Now looking at the Browns' notable offseason moves. Tevin Jenkins, former Bear, a guy I know a lot about. Someone who plays well, plays hard, but definitely has some pass some pass pro issues, someone who's not the greatest in pass protection, but is a decent run blocker. Injury problems are there a little bit, but hard-nosed guy, someone who really, I think, can give you some good reps, can give you some good games. But overall, I think he's pretty middle of the pack as far as offensive guards go. I was a little bit sad to see him go just because he was such a loyal guy to the team, someone who really fought for his guys. So that was sad, but I think he could be a good addition for the Browns. Cornelius Lucas, pretty decent pickup. Joe Troy Shoyinka, I think is actually a really good pickup for the Browns here. I like this one a lot. Devin Bush, getting on the older side, but I still think he could produce for them. JOK is still not. The Browns are still not committing to JOK. Wow. Okay. So hopefully JOK comes back, because that was a big reason I even predicted the Browns to win any games this year, if I'm being honest. No, I'm mainly trolling. Malik Collins, pretty good. DeAndre Carter, I think, was a good specialist for us last year on the Bears. Could be pretty good. They re-signed Jerome Baker. I guess maybe not re-signed, but they got Jerome Baker as well. So some decent pickups at linebacker, with the JOK concerns being there for sure. So overall, this one might be above the Steelers for me for offseason moves. I wasn't really paying attention too much to what the Browns are doing, but they actually made some pretty decent moves. So now let's look at their draft picks. So obviously the Browns traded out of the second pick and went and got Mason Graham. Something, didn't really love. Travis Hunter, I think, would have been a great addition for this team. But I understand you want to get the picks and beef up that defensive line. I get that, whatever. So pairing him along, Myles Garrett, who was the highest paid. No, I think he might be still the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL, because it was Jamar and then he passed him. So pairing him with Myles Garrett, I think, can be really, really good. Obviously, I think he was the most productive college player at the defensive level, which is why he was the first defensive player taken. Obviously you could say that Travis Hunter was the first defensive player taken, but overall, Travis Hunter wasn't taken solely because he's a defensive player. So that's the reason I would say Mason was the real first defensive player, like solely defensive guy, right? So pretty good pick there, I would say. Then they went and got Carson Schweizensinger or something like that. But I think that was a pretty good pick. Actually, I've heard a lot of good things about this guy, UCLA guy. Usually these linebackers are pretty good. I think they had 2 or 3 really good linebackers at UCLA. So it could make some production. Again, that was a need for them with the concerns of JOK. Again, I guess that's the theme of the Browns here. Quinshon Judkins, I think, is a pretty good pick. I think he might have been taken a little bit high, but overall, I think Judkins is actually a pretty good pick. And then Harold Fannin Jr., another underrated pick, someone you pair along to Njoku, someone who had insane production, again at a lower level school for the Browns. Could be a pretty good pickup there. I could see him doing pretty well. And then the most baffling moves they made was getting Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders. Dylan Sampson, another running back that they got. Interesting move there, 2 running backs. They did lose Nick Chubb. I'm not sure if they have Jerome Ford anymore, or if that's someone they want to move on from. But getting 2 running backs, 2 young guys, 2 guys who produced at the NFL or at the college level could be an interesting move. The Browns have made probably the most interesting moves, maybe not the best moves of any team, but definitely the most moves that are like, okay, I wonder how this is going to work. You know what I mean? So that's what I think about the Browns moves. I think Shedeur Sanders will probably end up being the starting quarterback. Joe Flacco's in that room as well. Deshaun Watson's not going to play the whole year because he tore his ACL again, something like that. So that's all. They have the most unknowns, I would say. Their defense could still be good. I think that you could project that the defense will still be good. Mason Graham and that D-line's still going to be really good, I think. Denzel Ward's going to be there. Guys like that. So I think the defense could hold up to being, top 15 level. And then the offense can come along in a way that maybe surprises people. I think the Browns could be a sneaky team that probably can develop into a decent team, but probably won't be very good this year, which is why I predicted them to go in 4-13. But let's take a look again at this graphic for one last time. We went over each team. 14-3 for the Ravens. They're going to be at the top of the division. Bengals are going to be 9-8 at the end of the year, just like they were last year is where I predicted them. Finishing second in this division and possibly sneaking in the wild card, but it'll probably be a tough race. And I could see them falling just out of the playoffs. Once again, Steelers at 8-9. I am predicting the Mike Tomlin Devil Magic to end this year. So 8-9 for the Steelers, 4-13 for the Browns. And I went over the rosters and all my, possibly more than I could ever have talked about for each team. So like, comment, subscribe if you guys are new. Let me know what you think of this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.
S1, I was the best one. You thinking way back, you should have kept them. You always question all of my methods. I try to hold you down. I just want you. Got a hit. I swear that you don't check your phone. I be pulling in the coupe on my own.